With over 1,700 Lowe's home centers throughout Canada, Mexico, and the United States, what would it mean to your company if I could show you a way to cut the utility costs of your air conditioning and heating by over 50%? And with a payback or return on investment within 12 months. That would amount to savings of at least millions of dollars for your corporation. My name is Ted Baker, and if you have 5 minutes for this video, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And at the end of this video, no doubt you're going to ask yourself why no one else has ever explained this and shown this to you before. Are you ready? Let's get started. We're going to look at illustration number 1 at this moment, which is basically just a square rectangle. And we're going to say that this rectangle represents your building. It doesn't matter how many square feet we're talking about. It can be 10,000, it can be 20,000. It is completely irrelevant. Now on this rectangle, we're going to add up at the top here a number of AC units. And here again, the same thing with respect to that number doesn't matter. It can be 6, it can be 10, it can be 20, it can be 100. It really doesn't matter, because what our objective is to cut the cost of your air conditioning. So how can we effectively do this? Well, if we were to draw a vertical line down the center of this rectangle and separate half of your building and turn off all air conditioning for half the building, then of course we would in effect save 50% of the cost of the air conditioning. However, I'm sure you would agree with me that that may not necessarily be practical, because you certainly do not want to have half of your building air conditioned and the other half not air conditioned where your customers are suffering. So maybe there's another way to do this. But before we get into that, let me ask you a question. What is the average height of a human being? For our purposes today, let's say that the average height of a human being is 6 feet tall. So we're going to add a little 6-foot person here to our rectangle and take a look and see how tall he is. We're showing him at being 6 feet tall here. So now we're talking about your building with a 6-foot person inside. So we can see from ground level to the top of his head at 6 feet. But let's ask another question. How tall is the ceiling in your building? And the answer to that question is, or at least here in San Antonio, your ceiling heights are at 24 feet. 6 feet is 25% of 24 feet. Maybe you see the direction in which I'm going. So let's look at another illustration here. What we want to do, or what our objective here, is to cut your air conditioning costs in half. And earlier we said that what we want to do is to cut the building in half and turn off half of it. And we basically agreed that that's not practical. But maybe in fact it is practical. What if instead of putting a vertical line down the middle of your building, we put a horizontal line down the middle of your building? And now we put this line at 12 feet, or maybe we put this line at 10 or 8 feet from the floor. The question becomes this: do we really need to air condition your building from a height of exceeding 10 feet? And my answer to that would be no, we don't. It's not necessary to have air conditioning at 72 degrees at 23 feet ceiling height. It's not necessary to have air conditioning at a height of 20 feet or 15 feet or maybe even 10 feet. What if there were a way that we could air condition your building from the ground level, from the floor level, up to, let's say, 8 feet, period, just 8 feet? Well, actually, there is a way to do that. And that's what our suggestion is going to be here today. Presently, in your stores, we have air conditioning ducts which are virtually at ceiling height. Now, all air conditioning works on the basis of return air. Some cold air goes out and it's sucked back into the return air, and it's basically air going into a circle. The problem that Lowe's has right now is that your supply and your return air are virtually just a few feet from the top of your ceiling height. And we want to change that, because everyone in the world knows that cold air goes down and hot air goes up. And yet, in your building, based on an infrared thermometer, I can see that your temperature throughout your building is 72 degrees. So here's what we want to do. In order to accomplish our objective, you need to understand the fundamentals of air conditioning. And basically, the way that all air conditioners work is that they put out cold air and suck back in warm air. It's a continuous, it's like a cycle that goes into a circle. And we call the air that's coming out to be discharge, and we call the air that's returning to be return air. So the air in your building is always going in a circle. But the problem that Lowe's has, like many other companies, is that these air conditioning ducts that I'm describing to you, the ducts where the cold air comes out and the ducts where the warm air returns, is virtually at the very uppermost top of your ceiling. It's at a height of 23 or 24 feet. So if in fact hot air rises, then all of the hot air at the top of your building is being sucked into that air conditioning system. But there's also another problem here within your building. At the Lowe's here in San Antonio, I counted over 500 ceiling fluorescent light fixtures inside one building. And each ceiling light fixture had 6 bulbs in it. So we had about 3,000, is that right? 3,000 bulbs? Something of that nature, 3,000 bulbs. And each of these ceiling light fixtures were generating 105 degrees heat. This is a tremendous source of heat that you are currently paying to air condition. Why are you doing this? Well, the answer is there's no reason to do that, and you don't need to do that. So our objective is to only have air conditioning in your building from a level, ground level, up until 8 feet maximum. That's it. We're going to leave about 80% of the store, approximately 80% of the store, not air conditioned. And the manner in which we're going to do this is we're going to extend down the ductwork of your air conditioning system. At present, the return air duct for your air conditioning system drops approximately 1 to 2 feet below ceiling level. We're going to take this duct down to a height of approximately 7 to 8 feet. So we are no longer going to draw in warm air from the ceiling. We're going to draw in cooler air much closer to ground level. And we're going to allow the building from a height of 7 or 8 feet all the way up to 24 feet to become warm. We do not need to air condition this air unless your products arrive in refrigerated trucks. They don't. What does it matter what temperature it is on the very top shelf at 18 feet within your store? Now, as we extend these ducts, we're certainly not going to extend them through the middle of an aisle so that it becomes an impediment for a forklift or in some way gets in the way or there's any danger of something falling or dropping on a customer. What we're going to do is we're going to angle the ducts the moment we begin to alter them and angle them in such a manner so that these return air ducts come down through your existing shelving units to that height of 8 or 7 feet. This, in effect, is going to allow us only to air condition a very small percentage of your store, virtually saving you a minimum of 50% cost. And quite frankly, 60, 70, maybe even as much as 75% of the cost. So now, is that it? It's very exciting. It's a lot of money being saved. We project the return on investment is within 12 months, but is that it? No, that's not it. There's a lot more savings for you other than just energy savings. If we can effectively, let's say, cause these AC units to run 50 or 75% less time, because that's what's necessary to save the energy, wouldn't that also mean that they're going to last 50 to 75% longer because they're going to be turned on less? Their lifespan will increase because you're using them less. So that means that capital expenditures, when in 5 or 10 years, when it comes time to replace these units, will become less because you won't replace them in 5 or 10 years. You'll replace them in 10 or 20 years. Now, is that all? Absolutely not. There's even more savings. If our air conditioners are now being used only 25% of what they previously were, isn't our maintenance and repair bills on these going to go down? Yes, it's going to go down. So what we're talking about here is a plan to decrease energy costs, decrease capital expenditure costs, decrease maintenance costs. We're talking millions of dollars of savings, okay? So this is what we would like to do for you. This is what we would like to talk to you more about today, as soon as possible. I'm Ted Baker. You can reach me here in our San Antonio office at our local number of 210-520-6640 or our 800 number at 866-9797-947. I'd like to talk to you soon. I hope that we'll have the privilege of speaking to you very, very soon. Thank you so much for your time and consideration of this video.